Hello, everyone, and welcome to another engaging episode of Coffee with Convery. Today, we're brewing up some wisdom with the self-proclaimed engagement engineer and ukulele enthusiast, Tom Schin. Tom is the creator and owner of Build Better Culture, where he helps businesses improve employee engagement, develop strong leaders, and create workplace cultures that thrive. So let's get ready for a conversation about company culture, leadership, and maybe even a ukulele tune or two. Tom, welcome to the podcast.
I didn't know I was going to have to play a song, Brian.
Well,
That
if we
wasn't,
have, yeah, go ahead.
I said that wasn't in the show notes.
We'll see if we have some time to do that or hum a tune, who knows. So to get us going, I wanted to always like lead with some rapid fire questions, gets us and the guests knowing a little bit more fun about you. What is your superpower?
My superpower, I think it's trying to make good connections for other people. I ultimately, when you're in business as long as you and I have been, you meet a lot of people. And, I think we've had conversations in the past where we talk about givers and takers and that sort of thing. I'd rather make a good connection. And I've done this throughout my career, even if it was something that I could bid on, if I thought somebody was better suited for it, I would rather the customer get the right person to help them
Mm,
rather than, the other side of it. If you look at realtors, for example, we all have lots of friends that are realtors and they're all great people,
yeah,
but some buyers need this type or that type, and not everyone's in alignment. And hopefully, your friends understand that piece. But I like to make really good connections and help people out. I would say that would be my superpower, is connecting the right people.
that's awesome. That's awesome. Another interesting question. Do you have a favorite smell?
Pineapple.
Pineapple. You are my first pineapple.
I love pineapple. I love a lot of things: pepperoni, jalapeno, all sorts of stuff. Tequila mostly, but pineapple, just like you get the fresh smell
The
of
smell.
pineapple. Like you go down to the Caribbean or on a cruise ship, you're like, oh,
Yeah. Yeah,
yum, mouth watering. I'm
you're
I'm
right.
moving now.
I know. We should have brought some pineapple. Best compliment you've ever received.
Wow, I think really I hear from folks, they say you're thoughtful, you're caring, you're so kind. I think it's really meaningful. You want to do your best to be humble about those situations. But at the same token, you're in an opportunity to just say thank you. I think it's an awesome opportunity to be recognized in that regard, because it means you made an impact on somebody.
That's right. That's right. Now back a little bit on the food side of things. Guilty pleasures, favorite snack. Is it pineapple?
Well, pineapple you can have at any point, so I think that's
Yeah.
always the go-to. But I love ice cream. I love pineapple popsicles. Cheese sticks, I guess, would be the easiest one. Like a good
Yeah.
mozzarella stick. Like there's
Yep.
good cheese sticks and bad cheese sticks, but I love
There.
myself a good mozzarella cheese stick.
There you
One that
go.
just kind of rips apart and just yum.
I didn't really eat lunch today. You're making me hungry. Um, talking about schooling, and this could be high school, university, college, doesn't matter, but like, what was your favorite go-to subject in school?
I was a math nerd for all intents and purposes.
Okay.
Um, so I was really known for the math side of things, and numbers were my jam. It was really easy for me to calculate things in my head really quick. When it came to figuring out just kind of the spatial piece. I suppose I should have been an engineer, but now I look back at my life, I'm like, I'm too chatty to be an engineer.
Well, you could take those mindsets and then appropriately use it, right? Like,
Yeah,
it's not a
yeah.
problem.
But it played
Um,
well. It played well for me, so I can't
yeah,
complain.
yeah, and it's a life skill, right?
Yeah.
Hello,
Yeah.
budgets, financing, like it all comes into play. First job, where did you first start? What was your very first job?
First, like, paycheck kind of job.
It doesn't have to be. I always like to hear like, I mean, I scrubbed pots as my first job. I did get paid, but
So first paying job was a gas station attendant. So I think it was
okay.
14 or 15. I was working at a gas station, pumping gas, changing oil, simple stuff, tire rotation kind of things. I was not a mechanically oriented kid, so it was really handy for me to learn that stuff. It lasted, I don't know, 3, 6, 9 months. somewhere along the way. And then at some point, I don't remember if my dad made me quit or I turned 16 and was able to drive to better paying jobs.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was a really good experience. I learned, I don't want to say I learned a ton, but I learned what it was to get up in the morning. And, a friend of mine was already working at that place and he would pick me up on the early morning shifts. So
Yeah.
yeah,
That's good. Good. Yeah.
grease monkey, as they say.
There you go. There you
And I
go.
wasn't good at it. It was a job.
That's okay. If you had to pick one word to describe yourself, what would you pick?
Entertaining.
Entertaining. I love that.
I love making people laugh, smile, chuckle, snort, all that stuff. It really means a lot to me when I can make them happy.
Yep.
So if I can bring some of that enthusiasm into the room, that's very much me.
You're good at it. I would agree. So you call yourself an engagement engineer. Can you break down to for us in the audience on what that means and how you came up with this unique title?
It's completely made up.
Yeah, that's
So
okay.
again, I swim in the employee engagement space. It's big for me. It's I really believe that people deserve a good place to work, deserve
Yeah.
to feel like they want to be there and not dread Mondays. And so this goes back during COVID. Um, so my oldest, he was graduating in 2020 and he was going on to become an engineer. He was going to school, but picked an aeronautical engineering or
Mhm.
aerospace engineering degree, ends up double majoring in mechanical. The next year, my younger child decides he's going in environmental engineering. So this is when this piece comes into play. I'm like, well, you're both going to be engineers. I want to be an engineer too. So I'm like, I'm an engagement engineer. Now, meanwhile, the older one has graduated. The other one switched to environmental sciences. So he's not in engineering, doesn't want to deal with the math and sciences. But yeah, it's sort of a made up title, but it's a little fun.
I love it. I love it. And hey, it works. It's interesting the math thread, then the your children going in, there's something there in the
Yeah.
DNA. Um, your LinkedIn profile mentions your story of being a hero, a creator, a caregiver. It's intriguing. Can you explain what these different archetypes mean to you and how they've shaped your approach to business and to life?
Absolutely. Good question. Some folks they wonder like hero, caregiver, creator, what is this stuff? So these come from archetypes or they go back centuries, right?
Mhm.
Back to the great philosophers. But if you want to think of like theater folks, when somebody's trying to call in a character or a behavior of a character to play a certain part, think like Daniel Day-Lewis, how he goes into character the whole time he's
Oh yeah.
filming a movie, right? So archetypes are, they help you tell a story of who you are. So for me, I use a system in the work that I do from Culture Talk, and they base everything around these 12 archetypes. The
Mm,
three most dominant for me are the hero archetype, which is sort of your fearless, jump into the fire, save the baby. If you need somebody to go try and score the winning point. Now, I'm not super athletic, so that probably fails more often than not, but I will be as competitive as the next person. Um, the caregiver is really exactly what it sounds. I
yeah.
want to try and help other people, right?
Yeah.
There's that sort of, not the stereotype, but that maternal instinct to try and guide people along.
Hmm.
And then that creator element, that's my idea generation. I am always thinking, and I don't want to say scheming, but always trying to come up some new way, some way to engineer something, some way to put something together, fix something, build something. Somebody comes to me with an issue or a challenge, and I always throw in suggestions. I'm like, hey, have you thought about doing this? Or how about if you did this? Wouldn't it be great about you combined, a stork with an elephant? I mean, come up with weird things when people say stuff, and it's either going to be really wildly entertaining or there's this aha moment where it just spurs an idea for them to just go off into the races. So
Awesome.
those archetypes bring in a lot of meaning for me in terms of who I am, how I behave, how I act every day, both in my personal and professional life. And so there's others in there for sure, but those are the three main ones that I carry into everything that I do, both from a coaching perspective as well as relationship building.
Yeah, it's really interesting because you hear like personas or you hear different ways of looking at this. And I think for the audience, it's really interesting to hear from you on this topic as they're kind of mapping out who they are, who they want to be as well, right? And
Yeah.
and bring that to the workplace as well as to life. So
Yeah,
Thank you.
every person has them, every organization has them, whether they realize it or not. You see it a lot with like marketing agencies who are trying to
Okay.
build a brand for an organization.
Yeah,
And you can think of places like Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks. You look at the color scheme and the fonts and how they lay things out, imagery wise, and they exude feelings and emotions that come from those archetypes.
absolutely. Really cool. Um, Obviously, you are all about building better workplace cultures. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in this world, right?
Mhm.
But what's the common cultural mistake that you see companies making out there, and how do you help them think about it differently or fix it?
So I would really, really glad you asked that. I think one of the common things that people run into is, we're doing enough,
Mm,
right? And back to my company name, it's build better culture, not build the best culture, not build the number one culture. Of course, you want to shoot for the stars, but it's get better than you were before. And
yeah,
those that have the complacency that we're doing enough, or it's okay, like those are the ones who are in trouble because everyone else is trying to compete and do more and be more. And so I think that that's a danger point for organizations if you're not consciously weaving this in, just as you're looking at sales numbers and quality numbers, every metric you can imagine. If you're not looking at how you're going to continuously improve, that's continuous improvement model, CIM, they
yeah.
use that in production world. Um, then you're missing out on opportunities to continue to grow and add to the behaviors and expectations that you're putting forth in an organization. So for you on the job seeker or the employee side of things, it's something to be very mindful of.
Yeah.
If you go to a company and they're spouting off, and I say spouting, that's not necessarily a bad connotation, but if they're saying, hey, we're really about learning and growing, but they don't give you time in your 40-hour work week to learn and
Mm,
grow and share that knowledge, and they're expecting you to do it on your own time,
mm,
what's that telling you?
yeah.
Right? Are they really about learning and growing? Or are they about give us your 40 hours and we'll pat your back when you've done something above and beyond that we're not going to pay you for?
It's interesting you call out learning and development because I was at a conference yesterday where it came up about how all these upskilling programs are being developed and all these things around, well, you can access this stuff and there's a lot going on in LinkedIn learning and all over the place. But one of the things like, and you hit upon this is you have to create time for that for your employees to do it. Like you can't,
Oh,
there has to be some sort of white space,
oh.
right? Or otherwise, the expectation is that you're doing it on a Saturday or Sunday on your own time. I mean, I think,
Or you don't even mean it.
or you don't mean it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I think about attorneys, right?
Yeah.
They have billable hours, accountants, CPAs, they have billable hours, engineers, billable hours, project hours. And the expectations are so high, they're spent by the end of that 40, 50, 60-hour work week.
Yep.
They don't want, like, they probably deep down want to learn and grow, but there's not bandwidth for them to do it there. And so what ends up happening? They either stay in that flustered, burnt out state, or they leave and find it somewhere else.
Yep. Very true.
Right.
Very
And
true.
so that burnt out person, they're probably giving you 50% of what they could, 60% of what they could. That highly engaged person is giving you 120% because you're getting discretionary effort, but that disengaged employee is doing the exact opposite. And that's the danger you run. Either they're there and you're overpaying them because they're burned out because you burned them out, or they've taken their skill to your competitor and they're exceeding the expectations there because they support it.
It's really interesting. I want to dive a little bit more into this because one of the big things I hear right now, and I know you're in this world, is oh, our employee engagement is low, or we're not seeing what we thought we'd get on employee engagement. Well, couldn't a solution be offering weight space for training, rather than trying to say like, let's do foosball, or let's do after work drinks, or let's do whatever. It's interesting because what do you think about employee engagement? I just think that you can't try the old way. I think you have to think about it more openly, but I'm curious.
Yeah, so there are some points like the foosball table. If you want to have a foosball table, great.
Yeah,
It's a great place to have some side conversations, right? For me, I find I need distraction moments. So I'll go fiddle in the garage. I was trying to fix a support beam before we got onto this, right? I need fiddle moments to let my brain reset. We all, as somebody was telling me about, I don't remember the exact term, but it's sort of the brain waves of active and inactive. Your brain needs time to reset, right? And if you're not giving employees that time and space or not creating things where they can both learn on the job, so maybe you're doing some lunch and learns, like let's talk about a topic and provide you some training.
Yeah.
Our time, we're paying you for it, right? Um, but if you're not spending enough effort in trying to draw in things that your people are interested in, you want it to have some tie into the business. Absolutely, right? That's meaningful, right? If you can find a way, if you're say you're a charitable organization and you all go to Habitat for Humanity and spend 4 hours moving lumber around a yard so that somebody who can do building stuff can do that stuff, right? You're doing together, you're community involved, you're giving, but you're doing a team activity. That's a great example of how you can weave some of that stuff together. It doesn't always have to be that complicated though. You
Mm,
can do meaningful activities, but it's again, it has to tie to what's my company all about? What are we telling people we're about? You know, our values, what we appreciate and want our people to know we care about, and executing that with them because they care about it.
right. Right.
If you say, "Hey, we're going to go to the food pantry and box up food for people," but nobody cares about that stuff, you're doing good stuff, but not necessarily from an engagement standpoint. You're doing good stuff just to do good stuff. And if you can try and connect the two for meaningful pathways, that's where people really, bond. And part of that is having the right leaders in place who support and can execute that. And they all don't necessarily know how. Just because they have a title doesn't necessarily mean that they've been shown the right way to engage people.
Absolutely. Interesting. Um, Thinking about culture some more, and I'm gonna reframe this one question I had. I think, um, okay, so companies can drive culture, people at the companies drive the culture. But when you think about like what resources every company needs to build a strong culture, I think that's one thing that's interesting I want to talk about. But I also want to think about I'm a listener here. I'm engaging in work. I'm at my first job, or I'm looking to help impact the culture. So one is the word the company, which is actually people. But like what can a person do to help to build a strong culture themselves? Like what can they do for that? Is
Right.
there thoughts on that?
There's lots, and especially for those folks that are newer to their career, everybody has a hand in the company culture, right? You come into an
Okay.
organization, you're adding to what was there, you're adding to the flavor of it all. The culture is the behaviors and the actions that we take that that are important, right? So you think about a leader who says they are very patient and kind and giving and generous and this and that and the other. If they come across exactly the opposite in their actions and behaviors when things are tight and tough, that's not living the culture, right? But if you have somebody who says, "Hey, I'm all about teaching and sharing," and they're always the first person to show you something. Oh, let me show you how to do that. Let me teach you that, or let me tell you how do you get that information, and help you kind of discover this stuff, right? That's living and breathing. And so each person, when they join an organization, brings some flair of that. They like that element,
Hmm.
but they need to carry that torch. It's kind of like the Olympics, right? The torch goes from one person to the next person, to the next person. Everybody's got a hand in it. And so they have to be able to carry it in the way that they connect with. So maybe it's showing a small thing that's on a very specific software task. Maybe it's talking to somebody about, hey, I don't know how to fix, a flat tire in my car, and they're a coworker. All right,
Right.
let me help you with that. And when we're done for the day, I'll show you how to do that. And that's just kind of a mindset shift of who you work with and what your culture's about. So you first have to know who you are, and then you start to define what does that look like from a business process standpoint, and then each employee figures out, how do I fit into that? How do I make that my own? Does everything, you don't get to just kind of run willy-nilly when you join a company. There are
Yeah.
rules and processes you have to follow. It's all
Right.
within reason. But, if you can find a way, hey, I think I could perform this task a little bit differently. And we have that type of environment where we support folks getting to the goal uh, differently. It's kind of like taking a road trip.
Yeah.
You can get from Toronto to Buffalo a
Yeah.
couple of different ways. You got three different bridges you can go across and still end up in the same spot and relatively 10 or 15 minutes apart.
Yep.
So,
That's very true. Yeah, no, it's good thought. You mentioned using humor in business. I also really think that's why we've connected so quickly and so deeply so quickly is because I'm the same way. I'm like, why is life so like even in the working world, like why not have a laugh? Why not talk about things, have some humor? But can you share a funny moment from your career that taught you a valuable lesson?
uh, some funny lessons teach you good lessons. Some funny lessons give you, or some funny examples give you things you probably shouldn't do again. I think one of my most entertaining, I thought was hysterical. Um, I had a colleague who I took the keys off of her computer keyboard and I put them in different places on the keyboard. So S went where I is and O went where V is.
Oh my God.
And
Yeah.
so if you know how to type, it's no big deal, right? You just
Yeah.
kind of blindly type. She wasn't that person, and so she couldn't use her keyboard.
Oh my God.
I got in a lot of trouble for that. I got a lot of
Yeah.
heat. I told basically, don't touch your computer ever again. And meanwhile, I was sort of the impromptu help desk guy. So like when they couldn't figure something out, they called me, even though that wasn't really, it's just they were too small. They didn't have an IT person. So
That's
yeah.
funny.
So you find different ways to make people laugh. And granted, that was around April Fools. I did a lot of
That's
other stuff
fair.
too. But I think humor brings so much energy and positive dopamine into what you're doing. And if you can laugh and smile and understand
Hmm.
what a person's sense of humor is, like there's balance. Now I have a rule. I play pranks in my neighborhood. I'm the guy that they don't want to piss off more or less because they don't want to end up with some oddity in their front yard.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
I just have this rule: do no harm. You can't break anything. You can't make anything a permanent fixture. Don't staple or nail or attach things. Like you can use some duct tape, or just don't ruin anything because then that's going to come back to you.
That's true. That's true. But I think the lesson there is approaching life with humor and work with humor. It's actually a healthy way to think and at the right times. You're right, like
Right.
introducing it at the right times. But yeah, I agree with you 100%.
I'm still challenged on that front because there are times where I have to shut the valve off. I'm like, no, Tom, too much.
Yeah, too much time to go. As an HR anthropologist, which I love that hashtag, what's the most interesting tribe or subculture you observed in a workplace, and what can we learn from it?
Oh, really tough question. So the HR anthropologist isn't mine. There's a woman I met through some folks in the HR social hour train of people, and she had it. She was a guest on this other podcast that I was on,
Very
and
cool.
I asked her, I'm like, I have an anthropology degree. It's in some respects not that useful, in some respects very useful. But I laugh because again, you asked me what my favorite course was, and when I was growing up, math.
Yeah.
I ended up with anthropology because seemed interesting. I love studying people and learning about people and cultures and this and that and the other. So it's kind of funny where I landed. Um, I totally lost the question.
No, no,
Sorry.
no, it's totally fine. So, like some of the things you've observed in workplaces, is there anything interesting we can learn from a subculture you observed and
Yeah.
at an organization? Because I think that's a big part too, right? Because there's cultures, there's subcultures, there's team cultures, and that's why when a lot of these people I talk to, like in the job seeking market, they're like, "Well, I'm trying to figure out the culture." I'm like, "But there's a whole cut of that, right? Depending on
Right.
where you're
And within
working."
big organizations, you have
Yeah,
lots of subcultures, and that's okay. It's
yeah,
not a bad thing that IT acts differently than sales or customer service,
right.
right? There's different personalities and behaviors. You're all after the common goal, right? You want the organization to do well. You just get there a different way. Some of you will run into companies that have ERGs, employee resource groups, and they help you kind of find your niche.
Yeah.
But I think things that I've seen companies do really, really well way back in my publishing days. We had an L&D director, and he just was this magic ability to draw people in and help them share their stories of success, help them share some of their challenges, and open up conversation. And he brought on outside facilitators and presenters
Hmm.
on different topics. And to this day, he's still a role model for me, and kind of why a big reason why I'm doing what I'm doing now, because I feel like I can play a part in this space and help people like he helped me and many others. And so when you have that shared philosophy where everyone wants to help contribute towards a greater goal, even if that learning and development is a side path, it helped us all become better leaders. It
Yeah,
helped us all get better at what we were doing. And not there wasn't any one of us that suddenly went from last to first. It doesn't work like that. It's
yeah,
just get a little better,
a
work
little
for
bit.
improvement.
Yeah,
It's kind of like having a sales goals. Salespeople have probably an easier route. My numbers are great or they're not.
right, right.
Or
Absolutely.
programmers, my program works or it doesn't. So,
That's right. That's
uh,
you're
but
right
yeah,
there.
the
Interesting.
there's others that come to mind like that where you have like-minded folks, but also I think the other piece to look for is groups where you can have challenging, cordial thoughts, right? You
Yep.
can disagree and still get along. Just because someone doesn't think the same way as you, frankly, nobody does.
Right.
You need varying thoughts because otherwise, how are you going to push and learn? I had a colleague at one role and she would push my buttons and we were sarcastic with one another, but she had great points and I let her know that. And whenever I had a thing that I said, she agreed with me, right? And there were times we disagreed on things and that was okay because we knew that ultimately we're after the objectives of the organization and trying to make the organization stronger, make the people stronger.
Right.
But it was good because you have people who aren't afraid to speak up, not because they're ballsy,
Right.
right? But because they care.
I like that. I like that. Yeah, not just to talk, but because they actually care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
And I
going to run
think,
into people who are the smartest in the room. Run from the hills.
right, right. Yes, I've had those experiences. Um, Thinking about the audience, I'm going to ask a different question now. So, if speaking up is an interesting one. I did a podcast a while back with a guy named Shed who has a book on speaking up and what his lessons he learned about speaking up at a young part of his career, which made him think differently about not necessarily speaking up, but the fact that you need to create an environment where people have a voice, right? What's your thoughts to some of the maybe the audience listening are like they're in a meeting now and they're going to be in a meeting tomorrow and they're thinking about the topic and they want to add to the conversation. Um, how do you sometimes not talk to talk like we just talked about, but break in with an idea that you feel you might want to share? Is there any like coaching points on how to?
One of the things I liked using was the phrase devil's advocate.
Okay.
And I think it allowed me to say things in my experience, and I've seen other folks do it as well. Just it's not that you're trying to argue, you're trying to paint the other side of what the possible results might be or possible outcomes. Meaning, all right, we all agree that this is the right path, but what happens if so and so does X? Or what happens if customer responds in a different way? Right. So I just want to put the possibilities out there that things aren't exactly going to go swimmingly. So let's think about plan B, plan C, and paint all these alternative scenarios. If you're trying to come up with a solution, it's like, okay, that process may work and likely will. But if we can just go down this, I just want to explore this rabbit hole, both from my own knowledge,
Hmm.
right? But also maybe it helps somebody think of another alternative because they think, no, that wouldn't work because of this. But now that you mention X, Y, and Z,
Hmm.
I had another thought, right? You're sharing to contribute to the conversation, not to hear yourself talk.
Yeah,
And
there
that's how you
has
can frame that.
it's interesting because the brainstorming that can happen from those types of conversations versus this is thou shall will do going.
Yeah.
Uh,
Know
you
the
know,
time and place. And sometimes it's one of those where you can say, this might belong in a side conversation after we're done here. Like if
yeah,
it's not a, hey, we need to make a decision today. Okay,
yeah.
let's table that, but let me put a note on my calendar. Who wants to be part of that conversation? And then go in the break room, go in the virtual break room, set up a 15-minute conversation, just explore that idea. You'll have had more time to think about that idea and flush out the pros and cons of it. Is it realistic? Maybe as the conversation went further on whatever you were working on, develop that. All right, that's not really a valid point now because we had these other factors that we just didn't have at the time. So, but it's a good opportunity to say, hey, this may fit here, it may not, but I just want to put these thoughts out there in case it helps generate new ideas or a different way of thinking of this.
Some good ideas and tactics on how to do that. One question for you too, like we were talking earlier about where we've gone in our careers and different things. So thinking about, I know that they always this question's always like thinking about your younger self. What would you tell yourself? But in a way, what would you like? What would you tell yourself? Because anything that you would tell yourself differently, like to think about it, that someone else could hear and say, "Oh, okay, I am going through some of those things."
Yeah, there's a few things. I think be okay with self-doubt. I
Yeah,
think we all experience that, and there's some shame and embarrassment that can sometimes get associated with that.
yeah,
It doesn't mean that you get to be self-doubty all the time. You got to own some confidence in being able to make some decisions. And sometimes
absolutely.
you might need a guide or, a personal life coach or something to help you with framing up how to think about these things, but don't use that person to make the decisions for you.
Good
You've got
point.
to learn to make decisions on your own. And so I, as a hero, part of my hero archetype, I'm not afraid to jump in. I learned this lesson when I was, I don't know, 9 or 10 years old playing Dungeons and Dragons as a kid. And I would always charge into the room, and the dungeon master got sick of it because I would always ruin the surprises. And so finally, he just started putting traps in the front of the room. You run into the room, you fall into a pit of spikes, you're dead. Right. And that just happened over and over until I learned to shut up. So some things are very experiential, but I think the lesson to pay attention to, if I could wind back, is be more prepared to fail and be okay with it, right?
Yeah,
It's okay to, don't make
super
grandiose
important.
mistakes, but if you do, learn from it, grow from it. If you're going into interviews and saying, I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread and I don't make mistakes, and my biggest weakness is that I work too hard.
Yeah, there we go.
I don't know why I'm putting an accent to this. I have no idea. It
That's
just came.
okay, but it sounds good.
But right, that it's it's a bad question. Who's going to admit that they're awful at something? But
Yeah.
frame up. I once did this, or a couple of times early in my career, I did X and Y and Z. And I've discovered now, because I've been retrospective about it, that that wasn't the right approach. I should have done this. I've learned from it. I've now applied this new method of doing something, and it's been way more successful, better relationships, better numbers, da 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 da. It's okay to admit failure.
I,
Don't
I
have lots.
100% agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's also on us to also share our failures with each other to help people think we didn't all just like hit the jackpot and
No,
right? It's not how
all
it
of us
works.
have a hot mess life.
Oh, big time. Big time. I want to talk about the ukulele, but I don't want to put you on the spot because I don't know if you are ready to play a little bit or
I
not.
am totally not.
Okay,
Um,
that's fine.
so we can talk
I want
about
to
it.
talk about it. Like, how does that fit into your brand? And like, I'm curious. Like,
So if you're watching the video, I have a
I
concert
see. Yes.
ukulele here. I have a soprano ukulele up here, and I have a tenor ukulele upstairs.
Okay, there's
So
different ukuleles. I didn't even know that.
yeah, based on the size, the length of the string, the body, they all have a different resonance. I like the tenor one; it's a deeper tone. That's the one
Okay.
I keep up in my armchair upstairs, and when I fiddle with that one most of the times. But I like having the smaller ones here in the office. The frets, or the amount of neck space that I can move my fingers around, but the little tiny one is harder because I have fat fingers, for lack of a better way of putting it. It's easier for me to work
Mhm.
on the tenor one because the frets are wider apart.
Gotcha.
Um, but several years back, it was pre-pandemic. I was struggling with what to get my mom for her birthday. And she's 89 now, but at that time I'm like, she's in her 80s. She has everything that she needs. I can get her food, but it'll go in the fridge and she'll forget about it and eat it when it's rotten because she still thinks it's still good. And whose parent doesn't do that, right?
Right.
It's that scarcity mindset from, World War II survivors, right? And
You never throw
so,
anything out.
no, I found 3 jars of mayonnaise in her fridge,
Oh God.
and they were all barely touched. I'm
Right.
like, nope, nope, nope. Get rid of these things. Anyway, I digress. So I bought her a ukulele. I'm like, all right, if I'm going to get her one, I'm going to get me one. So I bought it, sat in the box, didn't really fiddle with it. I grew up playing music, so I kind of, had some interest. I bought a couple of books and was
Okay.
sort of fiddling with it, but not really seriously. Pandemic hit. My wife gets sick, with the Rona, and so she's quarantined in the bedroom. I'm sleeping on the couch in the basement. I'm like, I can't leave the house, right? I can't do anything. Stuck at home. So I started watching YouTube videos on playing this song and that song, and it just became a thing. And so slowly but surely picked up some songs. I think May of 22, I was doing a keynote for an HR group and decided I'm going to weave this in. I'm going to make this part of the
I
keynote.
like it.
And so the song was by the Beatles, John Lennon, and it was actually Yoko Ono's song, Imagine.
Yeah.
And so I kind of painted this picture for this keynote about all the bad things that had happened and how we came out of it. It had the Suez Canal and Kobe Bryant and George Floyd and all these kind of imagery pieces. And then I was pointing out to folks as they were heading into this conference, imagine the possibilities of what are ahead of you. And so I showed the lyrics and I kind of told them like, this is really Yoko's song, and John Lennon sort of stole it, but there were a couple. So it's little gray area. And then so I just started strumming through the song with them. And so people were just like, what just happened? He took out a ukulele because I had it hidden in the, not the pulpit. What do you call the thing with those?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I know what you
Yeah,
mean.
the thing where you hold the
the speaker thing.
Yeah, you put your papers on it and you don't really use it.
Podium, podium,
Podium.
podium.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I had it hidden there. I pulled it out, and then I got lots of chuckles and stuff, but it made it memorable. And so I had people reaching out to me. Oh, you're the ukulele guy. I'm like, so clearly this struck a chord. So I've used it a few times. I took it to a state conference, did the same thing there, had a different thing. I had a fan group of people from my area. This was out in Syracuse we went to, but they came along and they came to the session because they wanted to see what was next with the ukulele.
That's amazing. I love it. I think it's cool. I think those things people remember. They'll remember Tom, the ukulele guy at that event, right? Like,
Yeah, just a little different, a little crazy, but
it's cool.
and I don't promise to be, Billy Joel or anything like that. It's not,
No,
my written stuff. It's just it's meant to engage and excite you and show you that you can do something differently and it's still okay.
exactly. And it's a way to stand out. And again, thinking of job seekers and people listening, like, think about those moments that you can stand out because that's what's going to differentiate you in someone's mind as well, whether it's
Yeah.
creativity of that event or the thought that you left them with, right? People remember how you left them feeling.
That's
Um,
it. Don't
that's
bring a
the
ukulele to a job interview. That's not the lesson here.
No, 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 no. I don't think that might work. We talked about so many like interesting topics that could go on and on. I'm just wondering, is there anything that you wanted to share or talk about that I haven't asked you?
We spent a lot of time on a lot of different topics. I would say, if I just kind of left with one resonating tone is that if you're truly about a learning and growing company culture and you're carrying that stick, make sure you're not just investing in teaching people how to do the first steps of the job. We
Mm,
get so caught up in like onboarding and training of new people, customer service team, manufacturing team. Let's show you how to move the widget or service the widget or sell the widget. And then the training stops,
hmm.
right? Don't stop. Create learning opportunities or look for companies that offer learning opportunities for the leaders. Because if the leaders are getting better and they're sharing that knowledge, everybody benefits, top and bottom, and throughout the whole organization, right? It's a mindset shift. And so those are the organizations that are going to continue to succeed and grow and foster creativity and contribution. They're the ones setting the pace and trying new stuff.
Yep.
Look for that. Look for those examples. And it's okay to ask, hey, how do you exhibit learning and development? How do you practice what you preach? Give me two or don't ask me for just one example. Ask for two or three.
Yep. Absolutely. It's funny because as you're talking, like talking about music, like in my head, as you're talking, I'm thinking the song "Don't Stop Believing, but Don't Stop the Learning."
Yeah.
Like
All
we can
right.
make. I think
I've got
that's
a
a you.
task to do now.
Now that's something you got to do with the ukulele. Don't stop the learning, right?
All right. I'm going to write that down.
I don't know. My head's. I don't know where I get some of these things come from, but I was totally engaged in what you're saying. I'm like, and thinking, "Don't stop the learning," which I'm not gonna sing. Anyhow, this has been amazing. It's such a great opportunity to speak with you, and thank you very much for being a part of this podcast and sharing your thoughts with the audience. I really appreciate it.
Brian, thanks for the bottom of my heart. This was a lot of fun. I love these conversations, but there are people that you get to connect with, like you and I, where instantly it's like, yeah, we're on the same page. We drive together, and it's such a awesome opportunity to share some things that others can learn from and be a part of that Coffee with Convery conversation. You've had some great
Thank you.
guests, and so I'm honored that you asked me to be here and happy to share my story.
Thank you again so much. And I know we are going to have some other adventures ahead here, so we'll maybe we'll come back and do another episode in the future.
Love it. Love
All
it.
right. Hey, so for your audience here, if you liked what you heard today, please share this podcast with your network. We're on Spotify and all the different channels that you can reach us on. And also, you can follow us at with Convery on Instagram, where all the episodes are listed. This is Coffee or Convery, where we show you that success isn't just about climbing the corporate ladder. Sometimes it's about building your own jungle gym. So for today, that's it. We'll see you next time.